Cold open. We grew up during peak sitcom, Seinfeld, Friends, The Fresh Prince. But those shows were diamonds in the rough. This podcast is not about those diamonds. It's about the rough. Some sitcoms were briefly popular in their time. Some were canceled almost immediately. You probably won't recognize most of these, and you'll ask, that was a show?
That was a show?
The podcast about failed or forgotten sitcoms from the 80s and 90s, starring
Brynn Burney,
Aaron Yeager,
And Andrew Helmer as Barry.
a Radio Gizmo production.
Just before we get going, I'm going to give a little explanation of what I'm dealing with here right now. So, for those of you listening, I'm talking weird, and I won't be talking very much in this episode because recently I was sick and I lost my voice, and I'm still slowly recovering. So, Brynn and Barry will do almost all of the talking in this episode,
Which is going to be torture for Aaron.
but maybe that'll be a fun twist, and I'll just play audio engineer and chime in with the occasional one
Quip.
or two comments or quips. Also, before we start this episode, I just wanted to say the past 2 weeks has been very tough. For me, it's been very hard and very sad and full of anxiety with what's going on in the world right now. And I'm sure a lot of people listening feel the same way. There's no way to meaningfully talk about these things here and in a succinct way. But funny podcasts like this one are actually an important break for people who are going through something difficult and scary. And it's important for us even recording it as a break from those things. So let's just hope and pray for peace and enjoy these breaks when we can. And now, for a very awkward segue, I will throw it over to Brynn
Yeah.
to kick off some
Yeah.
fun chit-chat with Barry and eventually tell us about the episode you're going to be reviewing today.
I mean,
We're
thanks.
gonna
for-
love your NPR voice in general there.
I mean, first of all, thanks for saying that, Aaron. Like, I know that saying something like that means a lot to you personally and to us too. And, on the topic of praying, this episode we're covering right now is about
Nicely done.
yeah is about the short-lived series Soul Man. Soul Man was a show. The series was created. Sorry. Okay, I'm all fricked up now. It was just that was just emotional. I didn't know you were gonna say that. I didn't know you were gonna say that. So
It
anyway,
was very well said.
Yeah.
Very well said.
yeah. Okay. Soul Man was a show. The series starred none other than Dan Aykroyd as Mike Weber, a quirky motorcycle-riding Episcopal priest in Michigan who is also a widower with 4 children. The series also stars Anthony Clark as a young Reverend in training named Todd Tucker and Dakin Matthews as Bishop Peter Jerome. The series also co-stars Helen Cates as a church administrator, Nancy Boyd, and Kevin Sheridan, Courtney Chase, Brendan Ryan Barrett as his 3 oldest children. The youngest son is initially played by Spencer Breslin until the role is recast with Michael Finneguera taking over. The theme song is a cover of the classic Memphis Soul song of the same name, written by Isaac Hayes and David Porter. So basically, we have a very kind of quirky, high-concept series about a clergyman who is also into music, who is also a biker, and has a brood of children. So, there is a little bit of a theme of spirituality there, but I feel like it's sort of secondary to the whole idea of him being like kind of an eccentric single dad trying to keep his life together and, dealing with like a chaotic household.
I think him being like a priest is all just like they enjoyed the pun and wanted to use the theme song.
Yeah.
Yeah, in one of my few comments that I'll make, I just have to say, did they start with the theme song and then just work their way backwards from there?
I feel like they did. And it's like a very popular sort of name for a show or movie because, of course, there are two other series, like one series called The Soul Man, which was starring Cedric the Entertainer, and that ran from 2012 to 2016 of a very similar theme. And then there's also a feature film that was released in the 80s, which was a college comedy that does not hold up in today's world because it's basically revolves around a student in blackface. So Soul Man was like a very the phrase soul man was like a very popular trope to kind of use. And of course, the song itself is a banger. So any excuse to put that into the mix is like a good time all around and kind of like what people thought was like a recipe for success.
It's kind of a weird choice, I thought, to not have him sing it.
Yeah, right? Because I think in the Blues Brothers, they perform that song. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. So,
I mean, I know Belushi did most of the singing in general, but I mean, I can't remember the sequel they made,
Blues Brothers 2000.
Yeah, I'm like,
that was with John Goodman.
It was with Goodman, but I'm like, did he sing more in that? I mean, he sings. I know he sings.
It kind of makes me want to watch the Blues Brothers, honestly. Like, I kind of want to watch those movies to
if I have to watch Dan Aykroyd on a mission from God, it's going to be that one.
Yeah. I mean, he'll always be Vedas Sultanfuss's dad to me.
Dr. Ray Stantz for me.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about this show. The series was created by Matt Williams, Carmen Finestra, and I may mispronounce this, but it's David McFadzean. They're the team behind Home Improvement, and there's actually a connection between the two series. They're kind of in the same television universe. So the character of Mike Weber is initially introduced in Home Improvement as Al Borland's church minister. So the terms priest and minister are kind of like used interchangeably, as well as with Reverend, because I guess in the thing that was confusing for me is having grown up raised in the Catholic Church, a priest is like a priest and they're not allowed to marry, but I guess in the Episcopal kind of church, it's a little different. So they're more of like a reverend or a minister, and they're allowed to like marry and have children and all of that stuff. But he's introduced initially as Al Borland's priest, and he appears in a couple episodes of Home Improvement. And then in the course of Soul Man, you also get a couple of the characters that pop in. You get Al Borland once again, played by Richard Karn, and Zachary Ty Bryan as Brad Taylor also makes an appearance in a later episode. So the idea is they're kind of from the same community in Michigan. So it's kind of that like, that sort of like middle class, sort of with a blue collar sort of bent, like that kind of community.
They really like to focus on like basically like the whitest parts of Detroit.
Exactly. They really did. Yeah. Essentially. And it's like, the fact that it's like Soul Man is like a little bit like, okay.
It's a little, it's a little weird. It's a little weird.
Yeah.
Because I don't even think it's Michigan. I'm pretty sure it's Detroit specifically it's that
Royal
he lives
Oak.
in.
It's Royal Oak, which is like a suburb of Detroit. So, so it's Detroit, but it's the burbs. So basically we watched the pilot because we usually always watch the pilot, and we watched season 2, episode 3 for the purpose of this episode. And yeah.
But I mean, you chose that one for a reason, obviously.
Oh yes, I did, because spoiler, the season 2 episode 3 features John Goodman. So yeah, which also the creators of this show were involved in Roseanne. So there's all this kind of like cross pollination there. Lots of like long-standing relationships.
It's Michigan too.
Yeah. So it's kind of like their sort of like universe on ABC is like these like Michigan-based. Although actually, no, I don't think that's Michigan. I think isn't it Illinois? Didn't we have this argument before? I feel like we've had this exact argument before. Whatever, we can double check that. But while Barry's looking that up, I'll just kind of summarize the pilot a little bit. So it was Illinois. Whatever, same region. It's the Midwest. Okay, let's not split hairs here. I mean, I'm sure that will offend some of our listeners that may be from both areas because they're like, they are not the same places. But at any rate, in the pilot, we are introduced to Mike and his kind of hyper and precocious children in their family home. And we find out that there is a local reporter, Bridget Collins, who's going to come and interview Mike about his sermons of all things, which seems kind of random. But the whole thing is meant to be a bit of a puff piece, but Mike is excited because he kind of always wants to sort of promote the church and, you know, maybe talk about their upcoming events, including a church dance, which sounds like the least desirable thing to go to. But
it was the hot ticket item that week, though.
Yeah. So anyway, we start the episode with him kind of like telling his one son to sort of behave because he's got this lady in there. And then his second youngest daughter kind of comes in and tells her dad that, oh, by the way, she's single because she's already interacted with Bridget, and tells him that, oh, I just told her that you're like desperately lonely. So that kind of sets up the interview for a bit of like an awkward interaction. You know, they start talking and we sort of get a sense of who Mike is. He's kind of like, again, like I said, he's quirky. You know, he loves pop music and he loves, to call his sermons that he has a stack of tapes of his greatest hits. And, you know, he's just kind of, he's not just a priest. He's a cool priest.
He's a cool priest.
That's the idea, right? So he's kind of like introducing himself. He's kind of has a bit of a witty banter with Bridget. And she starts kind of admiring his collection of snow globes. And his collection of snow globes all have a very specific theme. They all feature gravestones of iconic rock stars and musicians. And then in their conversation, they discover that his prized Elvis Presley themed snow globe has been smashed by one of his children. So it sort of sets up two plot points in one scene, because of course in their banter there's a little bit of a flirty tension between the two of them, and Bridget is very curious about what it's like to be, you know, a single man and a clergy person. And then when the snow globe is broken, he's upset and he basically decides he's going to play mind games with his children to like find out who broke it. And he's like, you know, so it's this kind of thing where you see the funny dynamic he has with his kids, where he's like, they're all pretty mischievous and they're all sort of, you know, like not afraid to kind of, like, they don't have boundaries with their dad. They're always kind of getting into his office and getting up to something and, you know, kind of interfering with his, like, you know, potential love life that is like awkward, and like they're all fibbing to him about what happened to this snow globe, and so she's finding this all very amusing. But I'm not sure why she finds it that amusing. I feel like the whole thing is a big red flag because he's talking about like playing mind games with his children. And
we didn't know about those then.
Yeah. And that he's just kind of like a kooky guy. But for whatever reason, she's finding it endlessly charming. So, you know, they continue their interview. And it really gets into the weeds talking about dating and, and like what he can actually, what the limitations of being in his position and dating really entails. You know, can he date? Can he have sex? Like what are the boundaries there? And basically he implies that yes, he can date, but it's like basically if he dates, he has to date seriously and implies that he can't have premarital sex. And this is a 44-year-old man who is a widower. And
he's got 4 kids, so we know he likes to fuck.
Yeah. He's, you know, yeah. So it's like a little bit of an awkward conversation because I found it hard to buy. I'm like, really? Like, you're that repressed, you're that innocent, you're that, you know, so, but, you know, I did find overall, like, I don't have any lines that jumped out specifically, but I did kind of find their banter, like, kind of clever. Like, I found that the conversation, the nature of the conversation, very awkward and a little bit contrived, but how they were saying it, I found it to be kind of clever. Like it won me over in the end.
He was a lot less creepy than a lot of sitcom men are, so it was a little easier to sit through.
Yes. And
which is ironic.
And at some point, the youngest daughter did invite her to this hot ticket dance in the hopes that she would show up and, you know, like they would continue to hit it off. And like the daughter is very, very invested in him, like getting a new partner, which is funny because she's very little. So. But yeah, and then the article is produced and ultimately it is all about sex. It's very sensational, and the idea is that he's this horny guy that's very pent up and cooped up and, you know, really it's very, very sensational. And his boss, the bishop, is not pleased with this, and everyone's giving him a hard time, and he has to kind of like, you know, he's very embarrassed. He's very, very embarrassed because it's like a pretty sizable like local paper. You know, it was way before the internet, so at least he had that going for him. But at any rate, this was like a very embarrassing situation for him. And, you know, she shows up at the dance. Like, so there's obviously something there, which I found really, you know, because of course, because it's TV and it's the 90s, she's obviously way out of his league in terms of like, you know, she's younger and she's a lot more attractive. And it's just, it's all like a bit contrived. She kind of leaves in a panic at the dance because she realizes, she's like, okay, like, she's a little bit interested in him. She's intrigued, but she kind of panics because the situation is very complicated and weird. And then only to come back later for them to have this like little heart to heart on their porch where he explains that, you know, he's very attracted to her and she admits that she's also very attracted to him, but that dating him wouldn't really be possible for her because it's very, like complicated due to the fact that he has all those children. And he makes a joke about, oh, I could give one of them away if you'd like. So that's kind of the humor. I mean, and then, you know, ultimately it kind of ends with the fact that they're not going to get together. He finds out which of his kids broke the snow globe. And there's kind of a cute back and forth. It's like the middle child, because of course it's the middle child.
Well, it's the one he knew it was.
Yeah, it was the one.
He says he knows it was him in the first scene.
It was Andy.
Yeah.
And he's like, I know it's him. And it was just basically, like, throughout the episode, it's sort of threaded in there where he's trying to, like, catch him admitting it. And they have this whole beat where they're in his office, like his like office where he would like talk to parishioners potentially. And he sort of like admits as like to his dad that he broke it as the priest. And then he's like, okay, now you have to be my dad again. Thinking that his dad can't hold it over his head because he told the priest in confidence that he broke it. But then he switches it up on him, saying that, oh, your priest told me that, like, I know that you broke it. And it's like a cute
because he said
moment.
Your dad was waiting outside the door and overheard.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I just want to say real quick about that whole plot. The snow globe thing reminds me of like screenwriting classes back in school.
Yeah.
When everyone would get the note that you got to raise the stakes. And I was just like, nah, I don't care about your fucking snow globe.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
I didn't need I feel like for a pilot, like I don't need a B plot in a pilot.
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
I agree. It was supposed to be, I think, a take on one of those old school family sitcom tropes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, like the really wholesome family sitcoms.
Yeah.
Where a kid breaks something and the whole thing is like, oh, you know, like hiding it from the parents and then the punishment. Like that was like on the Brady Bunch. That was on like a lot of like different family sitcoms. And I think this was meant to be kind of like a funny modern take on that, where he's trying to, you know, like construct all these psychological like mind games, and then the kids as well being clever in the way that they hide it as well. So sort of like, I think that was their attempt to sort of like satirize that, but in a wholesome way because it's ABC. And then it's like, you know, I was more interested in the other plot about him and the woman because it was more, you know, of an adult subplot. But yeah, they definitely had to wedge that in there because it was sort of like, what kind of show is it? Is it about him dating or is it a family sitcom? Yeah, Aaron is pointing to a note to me that on his behalf. So I will say, I'll make a comment on behalf of Aaron. Why is she coming on to him? Meaning Bridget, because she is like, you know, out of his league.
Well, you know, small town. There's
probably not a big selection. This is
dating
before
apps,
dating apps. If you're over 30 in the dating world in the 90s, it must have been a nightmare.
She works for a newspaper that like publishes 3-page stories on priests. So I don't know if her career's going that well either. So I just sort of I don't know if she really has it all together. It's interesting because like this is one of those shows that I did watch.
I did too. I didn't watch it like religiously, haha. But
no,
I caught
me
the
neither.
occasional episodes. But I definitely remember that opening with him getting on the motorcycle. Like that was like hard to forget. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Barry.
It's a real like So I remember watching this. And so I was kind of looking forward to seeing it again. It was completely fine. It's like a real, like, you know, it works mostly because of Dan Aykroyd. But I mean, like, you know, that's not the worst sitcom sin to commit, because I think a lot of sitcoms coast by on the likability of their lead actor. There's a lot of moments in the episodes, especially in the second one we watched, where it's a lot of like, and then Dan Aykroyd will just sort of vamp and, you know, dance around or sing or wrestle or just we'll fill some time up with Dan Aykroyd just doing stuff.
Yeah, doing shtick.
Yeah. And, you know, that works, and he works. He's good here. It's always interesting because you don't want to call him a character actor because he's not.
Yeah.
But he usually plays weirder than this. Yeah. So to see him play like between
he is weird.
It's this and My Girl are the ones where I'm like, this is like the normalest Dan Aykroyd gets.
Yes. He is like the dad who's a little bit offbeat. It's like he's the dad who's just a little bit dorky and weird. you know,
and he works in that, and it's weird, like, that he never really got he never really got any real dramatic work, like, not much, and he's not bad at that.
Yeah. Well, he's gotten some over the years, like in later years.
Yeah, but never really, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing, never. It's just, I don't know why I just remembered this, but didn't he play Britney Spears' dad
on Crossroads?
Crossroads?
Yeah, very random. The most random role that he's ever done, I think. But yeah, I feel like he always kind of plays a little bit of a version of himself. Like, he always puts himself in there. So, he is like...
But he also does a lot of accent work.
Right.
Like, a lot of heavy Chicago accents. Yeah,
which is funny because he's Canadian, but he definitely, I feel like he's always associated with the Midwest. Like, he's always associated. He just strikes me as like a Chicago guy or like a Michigan guy. So I don't know. And I know, Barry, you and I have like a weird connection to the Midwest just because of where we grew up, specifically in Canada. So we also like find like a connection with that. So I don't know, it's interesting. And he's not from where we're from. So I don't know.
He was born in Ottawa. He's maximum Canadian.
Yeah.
He might have. I feel like I should have done more looking into, but maybe the Chicago thing. He might have come up in the Chicago comedy scene a bit.
I think I do think he did. I think that's how he got to SNL.
Yeah, that's because he would have. Yeah, so I bet you he did a lot in that, and that probably got.
That's probably, where it all came from. But yeah, we also watched, as I said, season 2, episode 3. And I, of course, chose that one because of John Goodman. And so basically the plot of that is like a little dark. So John Goodman plays his old friend from their military days. And he comes to visit to like hang out and reconnect, and he hasn't seen him in several years. And this character has like, it's established immediately that he's like troubled and has like a serious drinking problem, and is getting into all kinds of hijinks with him, which is a problematic thing for Mike as like a, community leader and priest. They go out to a bar and they get into a brawl, and he has to go to church with a big shiner, and it's like a really, really bad thing. And, he doesn't necessarily want his kids around someone who's acting like that, but of course, his longtime connection with this guy, as well as his, perceived responsibility to counsel people in crisis, makes him like feel very conflicted. And, they share all these memories about them and another guy. What's the character's name that they reference? It's their longtime friend.
Well, he was somebody in their squad.
And basically what he finds out is that this guy was killed, and the implication, sorry, I need to rewind let's pause for a second. I didn't note what exactly happened. Do you guys remember?
Yeah, he was killed. So they're in the military. Mike, Dan Aykroyd's character.
Yeah, Mike Weber. Yeah.
Mike has since left, but Goodman and let's call him Schmitty.
Yeah.
Stayed in, and there was an accident with a helicopter.
Okay.
That Goodman's character was flying, and he blames himself for it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I'll just re-summarize.
So Goodman's character was trying to push this other guy to do a similar kind of flight stunt that he himself was able to do. Mm-hmm. And this guy didn't want to do it. And Goodman pushed him to do it. And he crashed they were together. They crashed.
I'm glad that I didn't remember anything. But I confidently thought I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodman survived the crash, but the other guy died.
Thanks for jumping in, Aaron, and reminding us of that.
Anyway, helicopter, guy died, Goodman blamed himself.
Yeah, so it's kind of, and that's kind of a trope that you see in a lot of the very special episodes of these like sitcoms where there's like some sort of, anytime you see a troubled man in one of these sitcoms, it's always something related to this. It's always some like trauma that they haven't dealt with. And they're this kind of jovial guy. And I don't have any other specific examples, but it just feels like something I saw a lot in TV at that time, where they'll come in as this larger than life character and then gradually they sort of unravel and they've got this, they're sort of becoming becoming a very chaotic presence. And then it's revealed that they have this like really awful trauma. And, the way they basically deal with it at the end in this episode is they go to Mike's church and they start singing together, which I found a little like it was like a very mournful,
which made it weird that then in the credits they did an outtake from that scene where it was just them fucking around and having fun. I was like, oh, you really killed the mood of your ending by like immediately showing me an outtake where they were dancing around.
But the song choice was very odd. It was Mustang Sally of all things.
Well, because they were saying that what's his name always played it.
Their departed friend.
Schmitty.
Yeah.
Schmitty.
Let's call him Schmitty because we can't remember the character's name. So it was like, it was definitely fun to see John Goodman. We see our first kind of glimpse of Anthony Clark in this episode. He's like a recurring character. We don't see him in the pilot.
I think he's full regular. He just wasn't in the pilot.
Yeah, he just wasn't in the pilot, but we see him in this episode briefly because he's sort of a young Reverend in training that Mike has taken under his wing. And so we see him and for something I think pretty inconsequential. But at any rate, it was another, it was a pretty good episode, but it was very tropey. And like this show is tropey, tropes upon tropes.
Say trope again.
Yeah. But, it wasn't bad. It was like entertaining. And they definitely, I think it's, that production team really got all the ringers in there. Like they got, like the fact that they even got Dan Aykroyd to begin with, like there must have been some long standing relationship between them. Because
you mean Goodman?
No, well, yeah, they had a relationship with him because of Roseanne. I'm saying Aykroyd. Like to get him to be in the series at all, to like develop this series with him at all, because Dan Aykroyd was already like a full-fledged movie star for several years. So
yeah, but this would have been, I mean, this is him after a pretty lengthy break. In successes. So this would have been like the old days when going to TV was considered bad.
Yeah. But
whereas now you can get away with doing a TV and maintain a successful.
Yeah, but he had been in like Coneheads, all both My Girl movies. Like he had been in all this like stuff.
Yeah.
So, I feel like he wasn't hurting, and I feel like Dan Aykroyd, I feel like he's not the type of guy that would like have an ego about anything. I feel like he just does whatever he feels like doing.
Yeah. I think, this is definitely a Dan Aykroyd project. So the whole thing would have come out. I mean, and everything in there seems tailored to him, right?
Yeah, totally. So, like the humor, the persona, the weird hobbies, like it's just... It does kind of scream him, and they were kind of like, yeah, we're just going to have you do your kind of shtick, and this is the concept, and, like it's kind of like they wanted to do another family sitcom, but they were like, okay, let's like find a high concept way to do a family sitcom. Let's get a really like well-known person, and it was kind of like a formula for success. Unfortunately, it wasn't successful. Like it only lasted a total of 25 episodes. But But again, I would say, like, I don't think it had anything to do with the quality, because the quality was up there with most things that were successful at the time. Like, I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed Home Improvement, that's for sure. And Home Improvement was one of the biggest shows of the 90s.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it really probably comes down to, like, how it would play with most of America, right? Like, I mean, Tim Allen is more of a household name than Dan Aykroyd is, right? Dan Aykroyd is beloved by those who love him.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's really like everybody run out. We got to see this Dan Aykroyd thing. You know?
Yeah.
Whereas,
don't know.
which is funny though, because I would imagine, I may be basing this off nothing. I would imagine that the two audiences don't necessarily meet that much, because, like, I can't stand Tim Allen.
Yeah.
And I don't care for his shtick at all.
Well, I'll say guys like my dad would watch both shows. Like, my dad loved Home Improvement at the time. Yeah. He always did the, like, weird grunt that Tim Allen did, the more power. Dads loved that. Was like a baby boomer dad show of the 90s.
Yeah. Oh, it was huge. It was massive.
It was huge. But then my dad also would have watched stuff with Dan Aykroyd. Like, he liked, you know, the Ghostbusters movies, and, you know, Dan Aykroyd has
outside of dads.
Yeah.
Outside of white dads.
Yeah. Like,
the second episode is very interesting. I had a few thoughts from it. I got to thinking about what you were talking about with, like, we do a bit of a special episode with this larger than life character who's got some demons. And the more I was thinking about it over the last week, I was just like, this is because this is so prevalent in the comedy world that people are dealing with these people all the time. Yeah. Right. And you have all these stories. I mean, Dan Aykroyd specifically lost one of the most famous ones, right? So, like,
his old friend John Belushi,
or your Chris Farley's, you know, these people who everybody said lit up the world, but were battling these huge demons.
Yeah,
and
totally.
John Goodman. This is one of those things where, like, you always saw this on Roseanne, right? John Goodman, and you see it in every performance John Goodman does, period. But, like, John Goodman can flip a switch and go from the funniest person in the room to scary, because he has this.
He did that on Roseanne,
he has this anger in him.
Yes.
That is palpable. And on Roseanne, like, when Dan got mad on Roseanne, it would be, like, frightening.
Yeah.
And it's such because he is this big teddy bear, basically. But, like, you know that he has a lot of darkness in these characters that he's playing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, he's always seems to be like, everybody loves John Goodman in general. So I don't know how much that's in him, but he sure knows how to channel it.
Oh, yeah, he does. Yeah, for sure.
And this was a real, like, it was funny because he comes in this, and right off the bat, I was like, oh, this is funny. It's going to be John Goodman, you know, getting to be a little sillier than he does. And then it was like, oh, no. Oh, it's the other guys here.
Yeah. The other side of the coin is here.
I was curious, which everybody knows this about me. I very seldom go past the required reading on these shows.
Yeah.
I did watch another episode with John Goodman in it.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was a lot funnier.
Okay.
He's still dealing, like, you can tell he's still dealing with things.
The trauma, yeah.
But he gets to be goofier, and, like, they're so good together. Like, they're back and forth.
They
and
have
like
a really good They have a really
he would have been a good
chemistry.
reoccurring character.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, wait, was this before or after the Blues Brothers 2000? I think it was after.
This is I believe this is before, because Blues Brothers 2000.
Oh, was it actually 2000? I did look this up, but anyway.
It was, yeah. But I looked all this up. They were already performing together.
Oh, okay.
As the Blues Brothers.
Duo.
Yeah.
While you're looking that up, I'm just gonna add a quick comment on this. I actually thought the plot with John Goodman in that second episode we watched was quite interesting. It's a pretty sad plot theme about pain and regret, and on the one hand, like the cynical part of me is like, this is a sitcom taking like moralizing family sitcom to its conceivable maximum apex. The other part of me is like, you know, a character like that suddenly jumping into the fray on a sitcom could have like just gone off the rails into something really like schmaltzy or just like, you know, trying too hard. But with John Goodman, like, I'm on board. He's he's, when it comes to that, like what you just described, the person who's like essentially a sad clown sort of character like this, he's a superstar.
Yeah. He knows exactly. He's got the sensitivity. That's what it is. Like, it's not just the darkness. He has the sensitivity to be able to play that.
Yeah, genuine, earnest.
Yeah.
Silly.
I'm
silly.
a big Goodman fan.
Yeah, I think we all are. Like,
he did one of the Cloverfield movies, Cloverfield Lane. Couldn't remember what it was called. Essentially, the plot is like it's a bottle movie. It all takes place in like a emergency, like a bomb shelter, like under a house. And he takes in this girl, and keeps her there. And he has that side. He's so quiet and so like sweet and like nurturing, but he's like fucking scary as shit in it. And it's like one of those things where you're just like, this guy can do anything.
Yeah, he's a superstar. By the way, Blues Brothers 2000 came out in 98. So yes, it's after it's after this, but not at two. But I feel like
we were all you got to go back to the 90s.
Yeah,
we were all very excited.
Was very invested in 2000. And I feel like a lot of our early email addresses had like 2000 in them. Everyone was obsessed with 2000. Like, it was like a whole thing.
Seinfeld did the Millennium New Year episode.
Yeah.
In the late 90s.
It's like, it's very
everybody's
funny.
Everybody's favorite pedantic fact that for that entire year was that the millennium wouldn't start until 2001.
Yeah. And it's really funny now that like Y2K quote unquote fashion and like stuff is like making a comeback, and like, well, it already did. I feel like maybe it's probably played out again already, but like there was like this new fascination with the era in the last few years, and I'm like, why talk about it? It was a weird time. and I'm very just personally triggered by the fact that stuff that I wore when I was a preteen and teen are now like, you know, what 20-year-olds are wearing. And like there was a recent, you know, we were out and about. Aaron and I, we like went out for dinner or drinks, and we like ended up going kind of walking through lots of youngsters hitting the bars, and I swear they all looked exactly like myself and my friends from like 2000. And I was like, this is so bizarre.
No toothbrush bracelets though.
Oh God, let's not go there. Yeah. I used to make toothbrush bracelets. It was a thing. I used to wear an arm full of like colorful bracelets, and Aaron's looking shocked and horrified right now. But I used to take old toothbrushes and I would like melt them and shape them into bracelets and stuff. And
Aaron's face right now they were like priceless.
But they always had to be those clear like the clear like acrylic ones, because otherwise they wouldn't shape properly.
Yeah. You get they're not the solid, like she wasn't doing like Oral-B, like they were great.
I don't know if they were great.
Somebody's got to put them in a movie.
Yeah, I used to wear, but yeah, like a lot of the stuff that I used to wear is like now like a thing. And the space buns, Remember, Barry? That was like my signature hairdo in like high school. I had 2 buns on the top of my head.
Yes, you did.
Like they got increasingly intense.
Some of your colors are back. I've noticed that. Some of the colors you wore a lot in high school are back. So,
as long as the excessive blue eyeliner doesn't come back, that's, then I'll be okay. But that's because that was my look. That was my go-to look. Space buns, toothbrush bracelets, and like way too much frosted blue eyeliner. That was like,
meanwhile, I'm looking at myself.
My Y2K look. Yeah.
I'm looking at myself and I'm like, what was I wearing? And I'm like, well, I'm wearing a Pink Floyd shirt now.
And you wore Pink Floyd shirts back then. Yeah. 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 I don't know. It's wild. It's like really wild. And like, we went to Catholic high school, of course. So we wore uniforms. So all of this stuff I'm mentioning is just accessories on top of like our like uniform outfits.
That's a big part. That's a big part of the uniform in general was trying to find ways to.
You had to dress it up. You had to express yourself somehow. So I would overdo it with the colorful bracelets and too much sparkly makeup.
Oh, mercy me.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I feel like this was a fun show to revisit. I remember watching it once again. It's like Dan Aykroyd. I feel like you can't really go wrong with it. Aaron's writing something that I'm going to have to read aloud. Okay. This is our shtick, guys.
Every time he keeps doing this, I just keep picturing.
He's smirking too, so it must be a good one.
I just keep picturing Kramer like drawing on Elaine's New Yorker cartoon.
Okay. Yeah. So the question is, why didn't the pilot have a musical number? Good question. It did.
We had to make room for the snow globes.
The snow globes were a big thing. Those were like a big showpiece. Oh, and where was so the bit where they show him doing a sermon, and part of the sermon is he's doing a bit that he's talking on the phone with God, which I thought was kind of funny, like to his parishioners. Was that in the second episode that we watched? Or was that in the pilot? I can't remember.
That was in the pilot.
The reason why
because he pulls out the devil hand puppet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
For his sermons being such a talked about thing, we did pick the wrong episodes because they weren't featured in them. But I kind of feel like maybe they should have opened the pilot with him giving like a ridiculous sermon that shows that he's weird and like why he might attract attention.
Yes, they should have done that. Just like Seinfeld always starts with Jerry doing his act. They should have done like a sermon or closed it with a sermon or closed every episode with a sermon as the tag and then made that, which I think they did in that pilot, but then they didn't continue that, it seems. But anyway, that would have been clever to kind of summarize like the themes of the episode, like ending it with the sermon at each time. Okay, Aaron's pointing to another comment. The juice he pours for his daughter looks like windshield washer fluid for a car. It's a random aside, but yes. But that was the 90s, once again.
Those were juices.
That's just what juice was.
Do you remember Fruité?
Fruité.
Those big jugs? I used to love those.
Yeah, I feel like, the best part about this show is how it's like unlocking these weird nostalgia moments for us because it feels like very, like even though all of like the shows that we cover kind of unlock some nostalgia, like for some reason this one is like getting me. I don't know why.
Well, we don't often talk about it, but sometimes if we can't find shows on streaming services, we'll see if they're on YouTube.
Yes.
And this one was.
And it had the best commercials.
All the commercials in it.
Yes. It was incredible.
Anytime I see anytime I see that it's a 30-minute video, I'm like, yes, it's going to be full commercials.
Yeah. Okay. Another message from Aaron. The cut from a very ordinary first scene to the opening titles with exciting lighting and music was crazy.
It was.
Yeah,
he's right.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
I'm still not over him not singing it.
Yes. Yeah. We'll never get over that. We'll never, there's a lot of like weird choices that were made that don't seem like obvious
lazy choices. They veered lazy when they didn't.
But do we know that, or is it network notes? Is it annoying executives peeping in and being like, well, no, we don't want you to do that. We can't get
Yeah.
And then, okay, so another note from Aaron. The snow globe plot. This is going to be the messiest episode once again. I'm sorry, everyone. I hope you enjoy us.
I can talk a little bit, but I'm enjoying.
I'm enjoying
this. He's just, and they're all the most random things that don't connect to anything, and that's why it's weird. Okay, so this comment is this: the snow globe plot is simply a demonstration of what happens when you raise kids with fear instead of guilt. But I think there's guilt too, because the implication is that they should hold like what they did, and remember, and I think there is guilt. He's a clergy person, of course there's guilt.
Yeah, but no, Aaron's right. Like the kids have no problem continuing to lie.
Yeah,
but they are afraid of consequences.
Okay,
which I won't say that reminds me of any specific religion at all. Like, certainly not the one that the show's about.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest tropes of the era is the widow and widower. Like, if,
dad's raising kids?
Yeah.
What a world.
Yeah. But like, you would think if you only watched 90s sitcoms and that was your only reference to the 90s, you would think there were so many widows and widowers out there. Like, it was an
epidemic.
Yeah, like there were so many, like, that was how
so many funny white men lost their
wives. Yeah, it's so weird. But in this pilot, the one thing you don't get that you often see when that's like a major plot point is like some sort of like heart to heart, like reminiscing about the dead parent. Like, they don't really have that at all. We don't know anything about his wife.
Yeah, because we don't need it anymore. It's like,
yeah.
We don't need to see Batman's parents die in the alley anymore. We know what happened. So you just move into the Batman stuff.
Yeah.
So now everybody knows, like, whoa, where's the wife? Oh, she's dead. All right, well, moving on.
Yeah, I'm sure there's another episode where they do talk about her a little bit. I'm sure there is. But like in the two we watched, it was just such a non-thing. Like, it was just such a non-issue. And I was like, all right, well.
It was the exposition was well handled.
I didn't hate it.
We got dumped a whole lot of exposition in the pilot, and most of it felt pretty natural.
Yeah.
Even though it was specific, because of the interview.
Yeah, because of the interview. He had to tell her about her life, so he gave all, like, it was a tidy way for him to, like, give his exposition.
Classic.
Yeah. Okay, and now Aaron is pointing to another comment that, again, is a complete non sequitur. The bar fight was wild. Yes, it was indeed. It was very choreographed and the bar fight, of course, happened with him and John Goodman's character in the second episode we watched. And it was very rambunctious. I did note that as well. It was very, like, people were being thrown. It was very intense. But yeah,
that would have been some scandal at that church.
It would have been. I'm surprised but again, because, like, it's kind of kept within that community. He's sort of just canceled for like a week amongst his group of parishioners. There's no like internet outcry or anything like that. Like, it's just this kind of like, like.
I did appreciate
Father Mike had a shiner for a week,
I did appreciate you don't see this a lot in TV and movies, but the reality of a church having multiple priests, because they all do. Most of them do. That was a good bit of realism.
Yeah. And like they kind of like there were elements of it that they were kind of trying to make it, relatable, like have it be a bit of a like workplace thing where there's the kind of bumbling younger guy and then the boss who's like,
Yeah, he's added up to here with your shenanigans.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. And then the fact that another trope, Aaron says, like Father Ted.
Oh man, I wish Father Jack from Father Ted was
in this. I know,
was
right?
the old priest in this.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, like another trope was the idea of the workplace of the main parent being literally right outside the house, because
that's what happens with priests, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's true. But it's an efficient way to have that, right? Because like there were a lot of other examples of that. The most obvious one I think of is on Step by Step, Carol's beauty salon is like right off of their house, and like there's like lots of things where either the parent works in a home office or their workplace is literally like right there. Aaron's like remarking right now, he's writing a note. He's saying, you remember details from Step by Step? Yes, I do.
We both watched Step by Step. Like
Step by Step was like a it was a very iconic sitcom for me. I wouldn't say it was like a great sitcom, but it was just always on.
Yes.
And it was very like, just a reality, just a fact of life. One of the characters
Family Matters and Step by Step were back to back, and I watched them like every day.
Aaron says fucking always on. Yes, they were always on. Yeah, and like it was like it was just like it was like part of life. Step by Step was just part of life in my household in the 90s, especially because one of the characters was played by an actor that had my brother's exact name. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So
that was so weird.
Yeah. So funny and weird. And like, I don't know. I mean, it is so funny as we just continue to explore these shows. Like it feels sort of random what succeeds and what doesn't. Like, I feel like this had all the elements.
Because they're all like pretty, most of these ones, especially in this mid 90s run, they're all pretty much equally terrible.
Yeah. Like they're all like at the same level of quality. Like there's nothing that's like better than, especially like family sitcoms. Like they're all at the same quality level. Yeah. This one, maybe people didn't like something where a clergy person was so like humanized. It's like they didn't like seeing, someone who would maybe be dating. Like if they had a minister, they want them to be married and they want it to be wholesome,
We saw a lot of dating. We saw a lot of dating priests in the 90s.
Did we?
Yeah, or married priests.
Well, but they were married. Like,
true,
like
true.
Seventh
Maybe not
Heaven
dating.
was like a big thing, right? Because like they were married, but they were married, and it was a wholesome family thing, right? Whereas like this is like Aaron noted that he's flawed. Yes, he's flawed, and he's like not a perfect person, and he's just trying to keep. Keep things afloat, and his kids aren't
Middle
well
America
behaved.
you're not wrong. Middle America might not have liked that.
Yeah, they might not have,
because they in the 90s. I mean, a little, not to generalize today, but it's still somewhat prevalent. But in the 90s, sitcom families were Catholic. Yeah, there was lots of plot lines about going to church, because that's what the Americans wanted to see on TV, apparently. Now, probably less so, but like you just didn't mess with it. That was, Yeah.
Oh, Aaron's writing something else. Oh, Friends. Okay, thanks, Aaron. Thanks for non-verbally teeing up the 6 degrees of Friends. All right.
I thought... I thought he was trying to be like, not on Friends. They didn't. I was like, but I was like, no, but we've.
Yeah. All right. So 6 degrees of
dived.
Friends.
I'm pretty sure we have dived into what religion all the characters on Friends were, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking.
Okay. So basically, yeah. I mean, the funny thing about this show is you would think that there would be several obvious ones. It actually wasn't that obvious. It was actually kind of hard, and I found it a little annoying and frustrating. So I only did a couple different connections. So yeah, basically, they're both through Dan Aykroyd, obviously. So he played Mike Weber, obviously. He starred in Soul Man, but he also was in the movie 50 First Dates. And obviously his co-star was Adam Sandler. And Adam Sandler was in a couple different movies with Jennifer Aniston, was in Just Go With It, and most recently he was in the murder mystery movies with her. So, and then she was Rachel Green as well. So that's what is that? 3? That's 3. And then we have a 2-degree connection also through that 50 First Dates movie, because Amy Hill was also in that movie. And Amy Hill, who we've seen several times in our kind of Twas career here, also guest starred on Friends. So that's 2. So it's 2 and 3, both through Dan Aykroyd and the 50 First Dates movie. But I was getting really annoyed, looking this up, because usually, my strategy is, I start my research and I always go through the main cast and I always right away look up if any of them were on Friends. And none of them were on Friends. And I found that really annoying and frustrating. And then from there, it was kind of okay, then I go a little deeper. Then I look up, okay, what else have they been in? Is there another obvious credit that they have with one of the main cast? But yeah, I was God, usually there's always a 1-degree connection, but this one was a little more annoying. And I don't usually like to go into movies that were done well after the time period. I like to try to keep it within the 90s, because that's just, I don't know, it feels more logical. But anyway, and then in the spin-off, it's the same kind of things we always say. With Dan Aykroyd, he was already a very established person. He was a household name. He had been in several movies before this. So I think everybody pretty much knows, that was his heyday. He was obviously in all the Ghostbusters movies. He was in the My Girl movies. He was in tons and tons of comedies, big mainstream comedies. So he was already an established guy. But following up Soul Man, he continued to work. So I feel like it was his only real kind of foray into the sitcom world. He kind of jumped right back into movies. So following soon after this, he was in the movie Loser. He was in Pearl Harbor, Crossroads, which we already referenced, which was probably the most random thing. 50 First Dates, which I already mentioned, The Campaign, and the list goes on. He has 114 actor credits on IMDb.
Tommy Boy, Brynn.
Tommy Boy, but that was before.
I know. I'm just saying, we didn't mention it once.
I know, because, I don't know. My head's not in the game, but, he's been involved as a writer and producer in many of his projects as well. Most notably, the Ghostbusters kind of franchise. Most recently, he co-starred in R.L. Stine's Zombie Town, which might be kind of cute. I think it's more of a YA thing, but I might check it out. And he had a recurring role on the Canadian series Working Moms, and he plays Catherine Reitman's character's dad, which is obviously a probably longtime family connection through Ivan Reitman. So, so he's still at it. He, of course, has his business ventures, which a lot of people know about. His wine
and his personal beliefs.
Yeah, his weird personal beliefs, which we won't get into. but he has his Crystal Head vodka and his wines, which I started drinking in my early 20s as like kind of a joke. I thought it was funny that he made wine, and then it turned out that it was like I didn't know anything about wine in my early 20s, and then I realized, oh, this is probably too expensive for a 22-year-old to be spending on wine, but I bought it because it was funny. Haven't had it again in a while. Maybe I should.
I know. We drank it a lot.
We drank it a lot because I just thought it was a funny novelty. I was like, "Oh, it's Dan Aykroyd."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in the store in a while.
I know. But the Crystal Head vodka is still like a big thing. Like that's still like always in the LCBO, which is a Ontario only thing. Yeah, and then for the rest of the cast, Dakin Matthews pronounced. I didn't know how to pronounce this, so I had to write pronounced Dakin or bacon with a D. He's like a guy who's been in so much. Like he's been in tons and tons of TV and films over the years. He played the bishop in Soul Man. But, he had tons of credits before this and tons of credits since. He guest starred in The Nanny, The West Wing, Providence, NYPD Blue, Dexter, Veep, Madam Secretary, and many, many more. He's had recurring roles in Desperate Housewives, General Hospital. Some fun facts about him is he kind of gets typecast. He gets typecast as clergy people. So he's played like either a priest, a reverend, a minister, 9 times in his career.
Maybe his name just reminds people of the word deacon.
Yeah, maybe.
And they're like, who are we going to get to play this deacon?
We'll get Dakin Matthews. And we'll throw him in. We'll put him in a cloth. Like, that's his thing.
Somebody be like, it's actually pronounced Dakin. And then somebody be like, I already started dialing.
And speaking of cloths, he also plays judges. So he just switches robes for different roles. So he's played a judge 13 times. And many cops, many lawyers. So he's kind of like this guy who gets slotted into authority figure roles because he must have that presence. Anthony Clark, who we just met in our last episode, in our Boston Comin episode. So he went on to have his Boston Comin show. He also starred in the long-running series Yes, Dear that we mentioned, and still kind of has a career in comedy off and on. So the Weber kids, they haven't... The one who's continued to work the most is Kevin Sheridan, who played Kenny, the oldest. So he's had a lot of guest star roles over the years. He was in... Judging Amy, Criminal Minds, Rizzoli and Isles, Castle. He's had recurring roles in series like American Dreams, Veronica Mars, Barry. He played Sean Friedrich in that series, which you were a big fan of.
Is it multiple episodes?
Yeah, multiple episodes.
Oh, it's not ringing a bell.
Yeah. He's also had a pretty substantial role in the show Heart of Dixie. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and then some of the other kids kind of just, so Courtney Chase, Brendan, Ryan Barrett, Michael Fenaguera, and Spencer Breslin, they all kind of just popped up here and there over the years in guest star roles, but they seem to be those, like a lot of 90s actors who kind of like leave child acting, hopefully for good reasons. Hopefully they leave for healthy reasons and not because they had a really bad experience, but you never know. So that's it. And I mean, like, the guys who created the show still continued to work, but this might have been their last like big show that they did. They revived the Connors, obviously, like, because Roseanne was like one of their biggest shows.
That's still going.
Is it still going? Yeah.
It's a shame because, like, part of me was like, oh, I could watch that. But it got rid of the one thing I didn't want to watch on the other thing. But no, I haven't watched it.
Yeah, me neither.
just for the sake of sitcom relating things, I feel like this is the place to talk about it.
Yeah.
Did either of you guys watch The Frasier?
No.
No? I watched it.
Was it any good?
I don't know. I can't tell. I
You can't tell.
I can't tell.
You can't tell if you liked it or not.
He's great.
Yeah.
It is like slipping on a glove for him. Like he's instantly the character, but it just maybe we've talked about it like a lot. It's weird to watch old style sitcoms made
Rebooted.
modern.
Yeah.
No, just made modern.
Okay.
Like, so still, but like basically it feels like this show could exist in the 90s. Like like the writing feels as like stilted and like sort of like, I don't know. You guys should watch it so we can talk about it or something.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we'll do a bonus app about this. But where do you watch? Where do you stream it? Where is it?
It was just YouTube. The Paramount's channel on YouTube has the pilot streaming. So
okay.
I was like, yeah, all right. It's weird though, because like he's the only one back.
Oh,
there's no supporting cast from the others at all.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
That's surprising. You'd think they would get them back. At least one of them.
I don't think any of them wanted to.
Yeah.
I think they were all not wanting to. So, yeah.
All
anyways.
Right. Soul Man. I mean, that's such a good song. I kind of want to just play that after.
The best part of
It's got the best hook,
Oh, yeah. The best part of watching this show was the morning I spent after it singing Soul Man to my cat. But obviously replacing the words with meows. And it works really well.
As you do, because you're a cat parent.
Meow, 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 meow. Because not even just the words. Like the beat can also become meows. This is great. And then I believe it was I'm a meow meow. Yeah.
And how did Cordy respond to that?
Not well. She's a critic. She's a harsh critic.
Yeah, we're glancing around at executive producer Gizmo, and she's she doesn't like what she's hearing either. She's kind of like, whatever. You guys are.
Well, all right there. We're almost done.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, Aaron doesn't have a voice, so do we even bother speaking to Mr. Producer?
Well, I'm not calling him. That guy hates me.
Aaron's pointing, he's saying we should check in with him. So I guess we should. All right, I'll do it. Where's his number, Aaron? All right.
Hello, Aaron, my boy. I was wondering when you were gonna call. Oh, it's been too long, my boy. I've been waiting for this.
Hi, Mr. Producer. This is actually Brynn.
Brynn?
Yeah, the co-host of That Was a Show. I'm married to Aaron. You've had dinner at my house.
No, Brynn, I know who you are. Where's Aaron? Is something wrong? What's happened? Is he all right? My boy! My beautiful boy!
Calm down, Mr. P. He's just recovering from laryngitis. He's right next to me. It's fine.
Laryngitis? That's no laughing matter. Literally. I tell you what you need to do.
No, that's okay. He's on the mend. He's just resting his voice right now.
What you need is peppers. Not just any pepper. What you need is a peach gum tiger pepper. When you have that, you take a glass of water and,
what?
well...
What? Is that a real thing?
It is, but you gotta get him just right. Now, I have a guy. He's based out of Cleveland, Ohio. Calls himself, get this, the Cayenne King. You call him up, you tell him Little Pepper Tony sent you, and I guarantee you, he will overnight those peppers to you right away.
Really? He's doing all right.
Brynn, I've had laryngitis 36 times. It's rough. It tears you up.
It makes you doubt the world. Did you ever have a voice? A voice is real.
36 times?
Well, yeah, I mean, a voice like mine, it aggravates.
I could see that.
Oh, my sweet boy. My sweet baby boy. Oh, I hope he better get better soon. To hear that voice again, that will be the happiest day of my life. To think I've taken it for granted. Never again.
So, anyway, this week we were talking about Soul Man with Dan Aykroyd.
Oh, Brynn, I can't talk about silly sitcoms right now. I'm too upset. My boy, my sweet boy. I am calling the Cayenne King right now, and I am sending you those peach gum tiger peppers.
What am I supposed to do with them? Hello, Mr. P? I think he hung up. Well, that was weird. He really cares about you, Aaron. I didn't realize that.
Seems very attached.
You're very, very attached. Oh, Aaron's responding. Sweet guy. Yeah, you guys have like a real mentor and mentee thing going that I don't think any of us saw coming. On that note, maybe we should all hop off so that poor sweet baby boy Aaron can get more R&R. But until next time, thanks everybody for listening, and listen to some Isaac Hayes when you stop listening to us.
That Was a Show is created and hosted by Brynn Burney, Andrew Barry Helmer, and myself, Aaron Yeager. It's a production of Radio Gizmo in Toronto, Canada. Subscribe, rate, review, and share. Follow us on Instagram and tell your friends about it. That Was a Show?
Radio Gizmo.